Good to see you, sir. Yeah, actually, we don't even see each other or hear each other. We don't really see each other.
Well, I communicate with you a lot on email and on Twitter and what have you, because I think that you're doing fantastic stuff. So I like to keep up on what Dave.ca is doing.
Oh, my goodness. What was that website again?
It was $20, I think, for that.
Right, that's coming up. But in all seriousness, Mr. McComb here jumped on a project that we were sort of working together. We talked about earlier on with the Alan Schoenborn situation back in, I think it was April of this year, where Alan Schoenborn is the gentleman who murdered his 3 children, was in jail, was getting out. A few of us kind of independently started up different projects, and my side of it was social media. But then, again, connecting to traditional media, we held a rally together in Coquitlam, and you guys did a whole bunch of great programming, which just got huge response.
Well, and the thing that, I think the reason that I was, that my show got so involved in it is that I was personally, I felt offended by the idea that Alan Schoenborn was going to be potentially able to get a day pass 3 or 4 years after literally slaughtering his 3 children.
Yeah.
To me, it didn't feel right. It wasn't right, and through Alan Schoenborn's ex-wife and her cousin, we managed to put together a campaign, and you got involved and did a heck of a lot of work on it. And got the issue out there. Had a rally at Coquitlam City Hall. Social media was a very big part of that.
Yeah, what I found was interesting working on that project, it was again connecting to traditional media, was we had some of the doctors who were on the panel who would normally be anonymous, but because they are government workers, because they're employed by probably the AG's office or somewhere, some ministry, their email addresses were public. And through using some Google technology, we were able to find out who these people were and hold them somewhat more accountable. It was interesting. I know at one point we had one of the doctors say, "I never said that." And it was either on your show or Bill Good's show. We were able to take a snippet of that, put it up on a website, tweet it out to everyone to show that the doctor actually had said that. Yeah. Whereas if this had been even 5 years ago, the ability to hold someone accountable for their actions or words would not have been there.
Exactly.
And also, so jumping in kind of our topic today, are you finding that social media is keeping our politicians more accountable? Does it make your job more fun to be able to follow them, or how's that work for you?
I was talking with, Bill Good and I were talking about this just the other day, and he was saying, because we're a couple of old guys and, creaky bones and...
but you're on Twitter. Both of you are on Twitter.
But we're on Twitter.
Crazy.
He said, he said, "How are you liking Twitter?" I said, "It's fantastic. I love it because during my show from 3 to 7, it's up all the time. To me, it's like a 21st century wire service, because if you are hooked up with the Globe and Mail, and if you're following Global TV, and if you're following CTV, and not all mainstream guys,
right?
But wow, there's a lot of information that's pouring in there. It's almost like a different kind, a new kind of wire service to me, because if there's something going on that we're interested in, boom, there it is, and we can go and follow up on the story and run with it on the radio, put it in,
But as a radio guy in media, how do you choose who you follow? Because your Twitter handle is?
John McComb 980.
Okay, so pretty much from your Twitter handle, you're identifying yourself, you're saying you work for the mighty NW,
right.
980 AM on your dial.
Yeah, AM still does exist.
It does.
In some places.
Actually, not in this area. That's a whole other thing. You can't hear it. You can't hear your radio station right here. But nonetheless, how do you decide who you're following as a journalist?
Well, I have to admit that my bias is toward news organizations that have a track record, who I know, which tends to be mainstream, the so-called mainstream media. The problem...
But you're the mainstream media. CKNW.
Well, see, I'm not sure.
CKNW is the #1 radio station in this market.
Yeah, but see, I've never been able to quite get a handle on what mainstream media means, because, we're doing what CKNW has done for almost 70 years, is talk to the community. Or talk with the community.
Yeah, it's pre-social media engagement, but using the airwaves.
Yeah, I mean, we use something called the telephone.
I've heard of it.
I know you have. Yeah. And people call us, and we put them on the air, and they say what's on their mind.
Right.
So, to me, what's happening now with social media is just the technological advancement of that whole idea, of that concept. So being on CKNW, it carries a certain degree of, shall we say, I don't want to say tradition, but there is a weight of expectation.
Yeah.
Because there's been some incredible journalists who've worked there over the years and who have put the bar up fairly high. So I look for organizations that set their bar fairly high. Now, I don't tune out everybody else, but if I'm following an individual or a blogger and there's a piece of information on there, I will use that. I will say, oh, that's interesting. Let's double check it.
Right.
Let's make sure that what this person is saying.
So you're still using journalistic principles.
Well, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to, because, you know, it's still, whether it's on Twitter or on the telephone, it's still journalism, right? It's still, there are still those basic attributes of and filters of journalism that have to be applied. Right. Anybody with a blog can go on and say virtually anything they want, and they can attack virtually anybody they want. But we have to take it a step further and make sure that the information that we're using to criticize somebody is indeed accurate.
What about in terms of politicians or government agencies? Do you follow any of those on your Twitter account?
I follow the Premier.
Right.
I follow the BC Liberal Caucus.
Right.
I follow the Conservative Party of BC.
What about your own MLA where you reside? Do you follow him or her?
No, as a matter of fact, I don't.
Just say it. No, I mean, I'm just curious. I guess I'm curious why, because, you know, I follow journalists because I want them to follow me,
right.
And I hopefully can have that sort of relationship that, yes, I'm fun and social, but when I need somebody, they're there. So I'm being very honest. That's why I follow certain people.
Right.
So with a journalist, are you following the Premier or following people because you want information or access to them? And are you not following someone because they just don't matter?
Well, it's a little bit of both, because you know, when you follow a politician, you know, let's say the Premier, I'm always interested in what she has to say, how she's saying it, because covering politics, nothing is ever at face value.
What do you mean?
At least from my perspective, and I tend to be a tad on the skeptical / cynical side.
Sure.
To me, there's always more that you want. And so if the Premier says something on Twitter, I might put that away in my pocket, and later on, if I'm talking to her, she's on the air or somebody's interviewing her, I might pull that out and say, okay, you know, talk a little bit more about this, because in 100 and whatever it is, 68 characters, 140 doesn't get it done. So what did you mean by this? Where are you going with this? But I find that Christy Clark is, her tweets more recently have been just sort of shout outs to people, and had a meeting
on message
with
and that sort of thing.
These folks, it went well,
right.
You know, that kind of thing. But yeah, a lot of politicians, a lot of, especially the media relations people, the so-called spin doctors, because those folks oftentimes, the information that you get from them is more clarified, shall we say, than it is from the politicians. So.
But how does it affect, how has social media affected the way you report? So are you looking more towards Twitter to get your information or Facebook to get your information? Is it just more immediate? Like, are you on the air and you have a Twitter feed going and you can comment on that immediately?
Yes.
Right. What's an example of something that you saw on Twitter that you decided to change perhaps your scheduled course of broadcasting and comment on or inject into what you were doing?
Well, what I usually, I mean, I use it as because we book the show, as you know, in advance, the day of, but the show is pretty well set by the time we go on the air at 3. So if there's a breaking story on Twitter, and a good example, it wasn't on my show, but it was on Simi Sarah's show, was the recent earthquake here.
Right.
Because we didn't feel it over in the TD Tower, but it hit Twitter first.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happened, we started making phone calls.
Right.
You know, because people were calling us in droves as well. I mean, it only took a minute or two before our phone boards were going crazy.
Right.
Going, did you feel it? Did you feel it?
Right.
What was that? What was that? And so, you know, in totality, you say, yeah, there's something happening. Let's get on it. But the first hint of it was on Twitter, and so you know that's
you
fantastic.
Bring that into your day then.
Yeah, exactly. And you say, well, they're on Twitter right now. They're talking about an earthquake. You know, did you feel it? Any more information? You know, let us know, because what happens in radio especially is when a story like that happens, there's a period of, I don't know, maybe 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes before you start getting phone calls back from people who, you know, you're trying to reach, sources you're trying to reach to confirm what happened.
What's going on, yeah.
So you don't say, okay, we just had a major earthquake. We'll get back to you later on that. You say, we've had a major earthquake. You know, give us a call and tell us what you felt, what you heard, you know, any damage, that sort of stuff. So in essence, what you're doing is using your audience as
to crowdsource your information
as your reporters.
But let me ask you this: in terms of the political or the government sphere, has social media made it easier for you to report on this, or more difficult? Is it easier because you now have a constant stream of information, or is it more difficult because it's bite-sized chunks that really don't have as much substance as having a scrum or having a one-on-one with somebody?
I don't think it's. I can't say that it's changed the way I report on government or politics. Because again, I like to make sure that what I'm saying has a basis in fact, and that takes time to research and make sure that you've got your ducks in a row.
Right.
But it is useful in terms of, as I said earlier, going, aha, well, there's something that you know, we'll follow up on, or we can look at later on in the show. If it's big enough, then, you know, we'll get a hold of our legislative guy, Sean Leslie, and say, "Do you see this on Twitter?" You know.
Well, see what you can find out. Sean being your legislative bureau chief, I think is his name over there. He just likes to have the word chief in his name, I think. But he's over there, and he was reluctant to get on Twitter. Sean's only been on for a little while. Yeah. And he seems to feel that it's just this huge revelation. It gives him access to people. But have you had politicians engage with you on Twitter or Facebook, or is that connection just not happening? It's just them broadcasting their message. Are you actually having conversations on?
No.
Why is that?
No, well, because I have my conversations take place. I mean, I'm in a rather unique position because, you know, I don't tweet about my life or that sort of stuff on the personal side, because I'm in a studio 4 hours a day with a 50,000-watt radio signal, doing it there. Yeah. You know.
We're all listening to your conversations.
And so, you know, I don't at this point feel the need to have to engage, because if I want to engage with a politician, I'll simply call them up, have them come on my show.
So that still happens. So even with all this, how connected we are, it's still picking the phone up and connecting with our politicians and our government. That's the more effective way to communicate.
Because it's otherwise in a Twitter environment. If you're having a conversation, I think that there's too much sort of waiting for the guy to reply or waiting for the politician to reply, and then you're sort of...
You don't want the thinking in the answer. You want the gut answer.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it allows me as a broadcaster to, you know, to go right to the heart of what I think the heart of the matter is, and ask them questions and focus on that. So, where it's almost as if with Twitter it would take too long, as odd as that might sound. That you know, I write something, I'm talking about it on the air. They write something back. I talk about the air. I write something back. It's almost...
It's not a very fluid way,
it's almost too unwieldy in that sense. Now, the way I use Twitter on the air is I use it for, you know, telling my followers what's coming up on the show. Or if I'm in the middle of a really good interview with a politician, I put that up there. I use it more as a medium of what would you call it, promotion, I guess, or getting the, the topics out there.
So you're really using it as a broadcast. It's an extension of your broadcast. You're not necessarily engaging in conversation with people on
right,
social media.
because by doing that, I mean, I'm still in the hundreds in terms of followers.
Right.
Okay. So my audience size is in the tens of thousands.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a disservice to
your broader base.
Core audience if I'm only concentrating on Twitter. So you have to be careful to, kind of amalgamate the two and use it, and I do use it more and more, but I can't go away from the broadcasting part altogether either.
Well, let me ask our audience, any questions for John in terms of connecting with politicians using, from a journalistic point of view, anything like that? Government folks that want to find out anything? Okay, I've got a couple more questions anyways. But how has is this for the better or for the worse for politicians to be on Twitter with a guy like you also on Twitter?
Your table is buzzing.
Yeah, that's my phone. That's okay. Go ahead.
Is it better or worse for politicians?
Yeah, is it, because now every thought or every message is broadcast and you're there.
See,
is that better or worse for them?
But see, I don't find that you do get every thought and every message. I think that, politicians use Twitter in the same way that they would use a written statement, let's say.
Yeah.
A lot of politicians use it as, it's the party line, right? I follow Rich Coleman, and he had a couple earlier in the week, talking about how the Premier's jobs plan was going to be, just fantastic, and it's going to be great and special and keep British Columbia. And, I look at that and go, yeah, okay, well, that's political spin from Rich. Thanks,
right.
Rich.
Right.
And I just kind of discount it because I wouldn't expect anything else from that politician. He's not going to come out and say, geez, the boss's jobs plan is really a piece of junk, and I don't think it's going to work. Now, if he said that,
that's newsworthy.
My God, that'd be all over the place. But they don't use it that way.
Do you follow the BC Poly hashtag?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
What do you think of the conversations that go on in that forum?
I think they're great. I mean, I still have a bit of a learning curve as far as hashtags and where to go.
Right.
What I need is like a big list in front of me so I can go, all right. Because we cover so many issues and topics on the show that it's not all politics, it's not all government. So I almost need somebody should come up with a directory, like a phone book.
So let me understand this. You want a printed phone book for Twitter?
With a telephone.
There we go. Maybe the dying newspapers can get into that business. But you know what? I really appreciate your time. I know you have a show. What time's your show on today again?
3 to 7.
And what's that station?
CKNW News Talk 980.
The World Today.
The World Today.
John McComb. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts as well, John.
Thanks, Dave.
John McComb from CKNW. I got it. Thank you.